I'm Alan Warren, the city councilman for this area. And I'm going to moderate actually tonight. I'm going to open up, say a few words, and I'm going to moderate. But I really want to reserve tonight for a lot of questions and then hopefully answers. And we want to try to get you the answers tonight. If for some reason we can't get you the answer tonight, then we want to make sure we take note and then we respond back as quickly as possible with an appropriate answer for you. So, again, my name is Alan Warren, and I'm the city councilman elected to represent District 2, but for almost the last 30 years, I've been a real estate developer in the city of Sacramento. And, over those 30 years, our city has changed quite a bit. When I first started developing homes in Sacramento, you could buy a brand new house for under $100,000. Brand new 3 or 4 bedroom, 2.5 bath house for under $100,000. Today, if you can find a new house under $400,000, you're lucky. Sacramento is changing. It has changed and it's changing. The region of Sacramento has actually changed. Sacramento, in case some of you don't know, has been identified as the #1 city, large city in the state of California in terms of percentage increase of growth, meaning people that have migrated from other places into Sacramento. We're the #1 large city in the state of California. And what comes with that are bigger city challenges. And most of you are aware because we've seen it. We've seen dramatic price increases and we've seen dramatic rent increases for people that are renting. Our office gets numerous calls from people who are either being evicted, can't afford their rent, or they're homeless and they're looking for shelter. It's a huge issue in the city of Sacramento. In District 2, we've been on the forefront of that because our district, our community, has been one of the leaders in saying we will step up to help solve the problem. Not just District 2, but we will take the first step, and we've done that. Some of you are here because you have questions relative to the lumberjack site and the homeless shelter that had been talked about for that location. Let me give you some early good news that site is off the table. Okay? Where's the clapping at? Where's the clapping? All right. Doesn't mean that our homeless problem is solved. What it means is that the mayor and the rest of the council, including myself, has to find other locations throughout the city of Sacramento that will help with the issue. Some of you have also heard that the railroad site where we have a homeless triage center now is going to stay open for another 90 days. And there's some good news and a little more challenging news with that. One is that the challenging part is that we said that the homeless shelter was going to close in May, actually, or early June. And I was one of the people that said that too, because that was the way it was designed. We had mitigation in place to take care of what we thought would be the impacts for that homeless shelter. And the city, believe it or not, is spending $400,000 a month on that shelter. It is an unsustainable amount of money. So the mayor, and we need to give credit where credit is due, and we know that there's been some challenges with communication and a variety of things that I've heard from other people about questions they had about the mayor and the mayor's motives. But let me tell you, the mayor went out and he secured private money to keep the shelter open for another 90 days, okay? So it will not be funded by the city's general fund. It will be funded through private resources. And I believe, you guys, that in order for us to be legitimate and criticize people when they make mistakes, we also have to acknowledge when they do something I think that's worthy, and I think that's worthy. So you might give that a couple claps too, okay? That's more than I thought we would do, okay? So, but with that, I want to have each of the panelists take a couple minutes, introduce themselves, tell you who they are and what their organization does. And then what I'd really like to do is to have questions from the audience so we can respond to it with the professionals that we have here. So first we're going to have Veronica Beatty.
Hello everyone, I'm Veronica Beatty, the Policy Director for the Sacramento Housing Alliance. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, the Sacramento Housing Alliance is a nonprofit that does policy advocacy around producing affordable housing, preserving the affordable housing we have, and protecting tenants and communities from housing instability.
It's okay, go ahead. My name is Monty Maxwell with Field Mortgage, and I give people money. Clap it up. I specialize in helping people with successful home ownership, from the education piece, understanding the benefits of home ownership, focusing on budgeting, and of course long-term financial goals. So that's pretty cool. So.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dozier with the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency. And for those of you who are not familiar, our agency is the one that is responsible for over 3,000 units of public housing and affordable housing throughout the city and county of Sacramento. In addition, we also have the Section 8 or Housing Choice Voucher Program. We have over 12,000 families who participate in that program. We also do financing of affordable housing throughout the city and county, where developers who are trying to do affordable housing come to us, and we provide that gap financing that helps those projects go. And then we have a variety of different boutique programs for veterans, for people who have need assistance, housing for people with AIDS, people who need shelter plus care with wraparound services. And we also have home buyer programs where we actually sell some of our homes at affordable price to those people who are interested. So a lot of that information can be found on our website, www.shra.org, but happy to answer your questions as we go along.
Hi, my name is Emily Halkin, and I am the Homeless Services Coordinator for the City of Sacramento. I work out of the Office of City Manager. My job is to coordinate the city's overall response to homelessness, both internally with all the city departments, but also externally with our many partners. This is not something the city can do alone. I will say over the past 12 months, my job has shifted a little bit more to direct implementation, both on the shelter side, which we'll talk, I'm sure, a lot more about, but the other big program that the city is standing up and which falls under me is the Whole Person Care Program. We also call it Pathways to Health and Home. It's a $64 million Medicaid program that offers wraparound services and support to medically fragile folks who are experiencing homelessness, and that is also just sort of getting underway. So I'm happy to answer questions about either of those activities or the other things we do.
Again, my name is Carl Simpson. I'm the Code and Housing Chief with the City of Sacramento. My division lies within the Department of Community Development. My responsibilities include running the Housing and Dangerous Building Program, the Rental Housing Inspection Program, business compliance enforcement within the city, vehicle abatement enforcement within the city, and weed abatement within the city, in addition to graffiti. I think that's about it. So, good to be here tonight. Thank you. I was a late invite, but I'm glad that I actually got the invite. Thank you.
Okay, before we go into questions, I want to just read something that someone gave me. Just so I want to read this so you get a sense of some of the challenges that are taking place for people who actually have jobs and are able to pay rent, but really not able to keep up with the increases that are taking place now. So this, and I'm not going to say what property it is or the name of the person, but I just want you to listen to this. The management has always provided ourselves has always prided ourselves in providing the best housing for the best price. We have been able to keep rents stable for 5 years. Unfortunately, due to increases in utility costs, property maintenance, and repairs, we will be forced to increase our rents effective June 1, 2018. Your new monthly rent is going to $745. Your current monthly rent is $630. The real market rate for your property that you're renting now is actually $955 a month. And this is for a 1-bedroom apartment. Wow. So what they're saying is that this unit can almost rent for $1,000 a month. The person that's renting the unit is paying $630 a month. But effective June 1, the rent goes to $745 a month. And it would be different if, as your rent went up, your income went up. But that is not the case. And so we have a problem now, but the problem is going to get worse. Home prices will continue to increase. That's my prediction for the foreseeable future. And Sacramento has the highest, in terms of percentage of rent increases, the highest rent increases in the entire country. So for those that own property, it's a pretty good thing. But we also have to think about those that don't. And so this community meeting tonight is really to try to have questions, answers, and to really try to find balance. Hopefully some solutions that we can go back to City Hall with and come up with ideas and solutions to help people manage their daily affairs and their daily lives. Because if we don't, the homeless problem will continue to exacerbate. And I don't think any of us want that. So with that, I'd like to, I don't know, do we have a mic that is a cordless mic that we can move around to the audience? Or this is the only mic we have? Well, we have another one there, but this no cordless mic is what you're saying. Okay, so maybe can we have people maybe come up to the front of the stage that have questions, and then we can have a person ask their question and then have the appropriate person fill the question with answers. So maybe if we come down here, maybe we can just form a little line here with 4 or 5 people at a time if we have that many questions. So please, can you?
Hi, my name is Elaine Jackson. I live over here in Wood Lake, and I actually do have rentals. I own a few rentals in Wood Lake, and I try to keep them below market because I know that the people who are living there can't afford it. But my concern is, what I would like to ask, is what are your plans in the housing that you may put up here? Because I feel like that we need to have mixed income housing. If you put all low income housing in one area, it brings a lot of problems to that area. And I would hate to see that. We really do need it. I was a firefighter for the city of Sacramento. I just like to say that for many years, and I'm retired now. And I know that for a fact because we used to go on calls in all the low income. I've worked with many SHRA people with fires, due to fires. I also was an arson investigator, so I'm very aware of how, what is happening with housing all over the city and what goes on. So I'm really concerned about this, not having all low income housing in one area. I feel, and I'd like to know if there
And some of the questions I'm going to help answer too, because I have a bit of knowledge about it as well. And so I'll take the first stab at it. Housing again is a big problem, and the concern, the question was really if this community will be the destination for a bunch of subsidized or affordable housing. And let me just say that this community has seen some of the biggest increases in property values in terms of percentages in the entire region, Sacramento region. There was recently a 60-home subdivision that was built. I know the developer and the builder who built them. And those homes were all market rate. There was no subsidy or any type of particular income qualification needed other than what they could afford to pay, and if they could, then they could buy the house. And I agree that we need a variety of housing types in this district. However, there are two projects that are planned. One is the VOA project on Del Paso Boulevard. VOA has closed on that site. It's moving forward. We're very excited about it. We believe that, and I believe that having housing along Del Paso Boulevard would help increase positive foot traffic and therefore making it more viable for businesses to continue to locate here. And also some of the other non-desirable things that happen in and around here will then, I think, be forced to move. And so the VOA project is going forward. There's also another project that is happening. It's moving forward at the Lumberjack site. That's intended to be a transit-oriented development, mixed-use project, and mixed income. So it is my understanding as it stands right now is that it will have some affordable elements to it. There will also have some market rate units as well. And these are both two rental projects. The ownership stuff is increasingly more difficult to do with government subsidy. There's just not enough money to go around. So what you're going to start seeing is more single-family homes that's market rate, for sale market rate, and the rental projects, there's a more highly of likelihood that those will have an affordable component to it because there's state and federal money. And I'm going to ask Lachelle Dozier to speak about the different resources that are available to help affordable housing developers and multifamily developers speak.
So one of the things that we do at the agency is work with developers who are doing multifamily housing and come to us. And obviously, if you are renting below what the market, actually can bear, then you need to have a subsidy to help make that pencil out. So when developers come to us, we use our federal sources. So we receive money from the federal government. We also use our state resources and we use our local resources. And we kind of layer all of those together so that we can then provide that level of gap financing to make the affordable housing that the council member was just talking about. In addition to the projects that he mentioned, there's another huge project that we're working on at Twin Rivers. As you go over 160, there's 218 housing units there. So all of that is planned to be demolished, and it will be another mixed income, transit-oriented development community as well. So, when we have the opportunity to do mixed income, we do. And that's a part of, our overall goal in working with developers. But it does require resources. And as everyone here, I'm sure, can attest to, we have seen a lack of those resources on the affordable housing side for quite some time with the demise of redevelopment. So.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Robert Charlin, and I live at Surreal Estates, which is an artist community, an SHRA project, right off the boulevard. And Jack Nielsen over there is my neighbor, and we have been having some trouble over there for a number of years. So I guess my question is going to be directed to Alan and Lachelle. I think that, it's all great that we have plans for the future housing and everything, but we have some projects. Our project happened over 10 years ago, and no, not yet, not that long. But it's supposed to be owner occupied, and what we've been having is for some time, we've had a couple artists move out, and they started renting their places and renting the studios as well as housing. And now we have, we had one of our neighbors died, and his house was bought by an investor from, I guess, Silicon Valley. and he was renting it out to non-artists, but you know, they were okay people. But now he has he's he's going to turn it into a multi-unit apartments. And what I'm wondering is, you know, we tried to go to the SHRA before when it was just starting to happen, and we weren't believed that it was happening. And now the results of that are this new house that's being constructed as we speak here. And so I want to, yeah, because we have an agreement with SHRA.
So,
A regulatory agreement.
yeah. So the great question. The question was really about a project that the redevelopment agency helped fund that was specifically for artists at the time, and because of turnover, it's becoming a non-artist housing project. And my understanding, and I'm not sure if Lachelle was there when it happened, maybe you were, Lachelle, and you can speak to it, but typically when the government provides funding for affordable housing or specific types of housing, typically they come with deed restrictions, and those deed restrictions are supposed to outline the types of ownership that can occur there. And so Lachelle should have some more detail.
You're absolutely right, council member. There is a regulatory agreement that does spell out the terms and conditions, and which is a way that the financing was obtained. So we have to go through, take a look at those covenants, and then go out and actually do the verification to substantiate whether those individuals, they are owner occupants or they are not. And so I think a part of this discussion that's gone on back and forth is, you know, when we're going out, and because we do compliance. So we don't just fund the project and walk away. We go out and do the compliance. We look to see, can they verify that they're owner occupants? So I think that's where some of the problem has occurred with this particular development. But this is the latest I've heard about a multifamily being built by an owner. So that's something that we do need to come back out and take a look at and try and figure out exactly what's going on, because that is not a part of the covenant.
Yes, so we will follow up, and in fact, we should get your name and number, and I'll make sure that Lachelle will follow up with her staff, and either I or somebody from my staff will be there as well. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that question up, so we'll look into it right away, okay? In fact, I don't think we have a sign. Did we have a sign-in sheet at the front? Okay, so we just need to make sure we can identify and get back to you. Okay. Next question, please. Jane.
Thank you. My name's Jane McCauley. Thank you for being here. Thank you for organizing, Alan. I had two questions. The first one was regarding a TOD property. Is there a specific requirement for the type? You know, from what I read, it looked like it was 25% requirement for affordable, and the rest was low income. Is that for TOD? Well, I thought it was in general, but lumberjack specifically.
So the question was, is there a specific determination as to affordable, non-affordable for a TOD site? Jane had asked, and the developer has not actually put an application in yet, so we don't really know what their full plans are. And they have not contacted Lachelle, which is probably something they would do if they're going to do something with some type of affordability element. I'm sure they would contact Lachelle. So we haven't heard from them yet.
I thought there was, it's written actually that in the definition of TOD that the percentages that are required, but I didn't really understand it. So I thought maybe somebody might know, but okay. So then my second question, sorry, would be to maybe to Emily or maybe to Alan, but it's regarding Evergreen. Is the city prepared to take the offer, their bid off the table?
There too, Emily. The question was in reference to the homeless 24/7 homeless shelter that had been discussed and written about in the paper, if the city is prepared to take an offer from a different potential owner. Is that your question?
No,
Or if the city will take their bid back? Yes. You know, the city now, in fact, I did an interview today, and the person that interviewed me from Channel 3 said that the mayor today told him that if Allen did not support it, that he would take it off the table. And I've told you guys, please, more. Keep it coming. And I've said that I do not support it. I've been public with that, and I said that District 2 has done enough. And we need to see the rest of the city step up. So I would expect then that the city will not be in pursuit of this property any further. Okay. So you guys, the mayor's made a statement. It's public now. The city manager has also made a statement to me. I met with a group on Saturday. We had the discussion, and I made the statement that the mayor told me, city manager told me, that they would not be in pursuit of this property, and I expect them to honor their word, and I expect that to come off the table for the city of Sacramento. Okay. All right. Next question.
Hi, I'm Denise Creighton. I've lived in Del Paso Heights for over 30 years. We've got some problems with narrow streets, and we have a lot of homeless people with their campers and their motorhomes and their cars parking all over the neighborhoods. We call code enforcement. It takes up to 10 calls before somebody comes out and says they need to move. They just move from one block to another block. Has the city ever considered providing a piece of land where these homeless people, with their vans and their motorhomes, can park legally and get out of our tiny streets?
Very good question, you guys. Very good question. So I'm going to speak to this, and then I'm going to let Emily share something with all of you about a trip she recently took and some of the things that are in the work from the city of Sacramento. And in fact, I just saw a celebrity walk in, you guys. Would you please give Roger Dickinson a round of applause, you guys? A big-time celebrity. Long-time politician and a good person and a friend. So let me just say that Del Paso Heights is a very old community. It is a very old community. It's a rich in culture and history community. But at one time, it was part of, all of Rancho Del Paso, and this was the most prominent region in the entire, most prominent part of the entire region, this area. And there are a lot of streets without sidewalks. There are a lot of things that were done the old way. And now things are changing. You're starting to see on vacant lots, you're starting to see people building, single family homes. But as it relates to your concern about code enforcement, Carl is the man, and Carl has been, in my opinion, very responsive since he's been the head of the code department. But anytime you call for code and you're not getting a response, for whatever reason, please let our office know too so we can track it. And then typically we see a response in the event that it had not been responded to initially, so we can help expedite the response. But Carl, do you want to speak to the code piece first, and then maybe Emily will speak to places for homeless people and trailers and things like that, the potential that we see on the horizon.
So, can you hear me? So it should never take 10 phone calls to get action from my office. I would prefer that you not go to the council member first, but come to me. But that's fine. One of the recommendations, one of the things is, though, you need to understand about these vehicles is if it's a motor vehicle and it's registered in the state of California and it's got current registration, they can be any place they want to be for 72 hours. We don't have a no camping ordinance in vehicles. One of the things that I would recommend, though, and I've said this to a couple of communities, is that my previous employer, my previous, the city of San Jose, had a problem with vehicles that were camping, and one of the things they did is they put up no parking signs for any vehicle in excess of 6 feet tall. So that would preclude a lot of these campers from being able to legally park in some of these neighborhoods. So that's just one creative way of trying to deal with some of these campers that are just, clogging up the streets in some of our more dense neighborhoods. And my contact information is online. You should be able to get a hold of me by either email the code chief. I have cards here, so if you want to make a direct connection with me so you can get direct access, I'm more than glad to provide you that.
Okay, and then I wanted to just say one quick thing about safe parking, sort of from the service side, because Carl's definitely right on the code side. There have been questions asked of me in various non-formal formats about what you didn't use this term, but basically you're asking about safe parking zones. Some cities have created safe parking programs where folks who are experiencing homelessness and live in their vehicle can park in a designated location. We haven't pursued that in a formal way, but I do know it's something that comes up quite a bit, and there's some positives and negatives out of other communities who have done this. I will say that folks experiencing homelessness who live in their vehicles are often some of the most hidden from us, and so very difficult to do outreach because they're not as visible. They don't typically trigger as many complaints. In addition to reporting to Carl for the purposes of the vehicle, just so you know, that also will trigger an incident for us to send out the impact team with their outreach resources and hopefully connect some of those folks with resources as they're available. So that's something else. But the council member wanted me to talk to you about what was already mentioned in the paper, but I'll tell you what really happened. The bee gets a little bit ahead of us sometimes. So we recognize that there's not a singular way to provide sheltering for our community, and the shelter at Railroad has brought a lot of lessons learned to us, I think to the community, to the homeless serving world as well. And so simultaneously, we've been pursuing actually 3 things to look for permanent sites or more permanent sites for shelters. The first is Lumberjack, which I'm hearing is off the table. So I'm just going to say we have been working on that, but it's off the table. But the other 2 that we're simultaneously working on, one is we did engage a commercial broker to look for other potential sites that the city could purchase or lease. That is still outside of, all throughout the city, but focusing outside District 2. I will say that it is still active, but it's clear to us that they're very expensive to buy something on the open market, just to be honest. But the third thing is looking at potential sites throughout the city that we might own or that might be available to us to develop what is been called a sprung structure. Some people call them tents. I would hesitate to call them tents. So I went, actually Monday, I was in San Francisco, and the previous Monday I was in San Diego. Both of those cities have deployed this type of structure to provide emergency sheltering. 2 very, very different approaches. In San Diego, it really was a crisis. They stood up 3 of these sheltering structures in the manner of 6 to 8 weeks. They had now they also had a public health crisis in the form of hepatitis A, and they had a mayoral direction and a community direction to get these structures up. I went into that a little bit hesitant, and I will say I left pleasantly, very pleased with how it looked and felt and operated. The largest one had 350 individuals in it. The smallest one was for families, so had I think 120 or so, but that included some children. They are intended in San Diego to be temporary. They literally are erected on a street that has been closed down or on a parking lot that is no longer available for parking. Contrast that with San Francisco. San Francisco has been developing what they call navigation centers. I'd say it's very akin to our goals for our triage shelters. Very intentional sheltering opportunities wrapped around with services. Most of these sites have been in traditionally built buildings. They have one in a former school. They have one in a big warehouse. They also now are developing one with these sprung structures. They are developing with the intention this will be here for a longer time. It still is not a permanent building because it's a pop-up sprung structure. These are not hard-sided buildings, but they are very well insulated. They're very well constructed. Basically, what differentiates them from a traditional building this is where I'm not a construction person, is that they don't require any pillars on the inside for support. So they are just an external shell. And secondly, they can be erected very quickly, 30 days. So San Francisco is doing this on a much smaller scale, about 125 people. They're site planning, they're building and services. So we are exploring all ranges of this. We haven't found or committed to any one site or sites throughout the city, but I'm excited about the variety of options that are out there. It's less about, from my perspective, it's less about the building, and it's more about how you provide services and how people access the programs.
Very good. Thank you, Emily. Next question, please. Mr. Barnhart.
Yes, so first of all, to your point some moments ago, if there was a celebrity in the room this evening, my comment is yes on 69, no on any effort to repeal SB 1. So, my brief questions are, on the Railroad Avenue site, there was something I read, some grants were awarded at the end of April by CalSTA through the TIRCP process, and Railroad Avenue was mentioned potentially as an unmanned train station in a couple of years for San Joaquin Valley service. If that does come to fruition, what potential other sites throughout the city would the current Railroad Avenue homeless shelter be considered to relocate to if Railroad Avenue needs to become an unmanned train station? Related question. There was some discussion, I forget how many years ago it was, in the North Sacramento community to relocate the Arden Del Paso Transit Center to the Swanston station. Is there still an effort to do that? And the third question, congratulations to the Sacramento Housing Redevelopment Agency on successfully holding down the redevelopment agency portion of the title. I knew following state government, there was a breakup or demise of redevelopment agencies. And my question is, how was Sacramento so successful to keep that as part of their title? And fourth and final question is, on the letter read at the beginning of the forum, for whether the person is successfully employed and is having a rent increase, but their employer is not going to be as easy to give them a pay increase, or for someone who is receiving unemployment, does the city provide any of its constituents any assistance, either if they're employed to transition to another employer that would pay higher to cover that cost, or some housing assistance through the council members' offices, depending on where the constituent resides?
All right, that was quite a few questions, Mike. So we're gonna try to answer them. Let me just say the potential relocation of the Arden Del Paso transit station. You know, I've heard some talk about that, but we'll have to get back to you with that, because I'm not certain where it is, and I'm not on the RT board, and so we'll have to find out. Daniel from my office is in the back. He may have some more information about it, but we can come back to you on that. I think relative to assistance for people having challenges meeting their rent obligation or finding another place to live because their rent has maybe outpaced their income, maybe Lachelle can speak to that. But one of the other things I think is extremely important is that people who are renting, hi Rudy, people that are renting should, if they could, consider buying. Oftentimes it could be cheaper or more efficient if you can find a place to buy as opposed to renting. And sometimes, I mean, the way the rent scale is going now, if you can find a house under $300,000, and where interest rates are now, Monty can also be very helpful in that. It might be more advantageous for you to look at purchasing, but maybe, Lachelle, can you talk about any assistance that your organization has? Or maybe Veronica may even also have some information as it relates to that.
So, in terms of the assistance that we provide, it is based on your income. And there are people who probably don't realize that they are eligible for affordable housing, especially as the rents start to go up. I think it's really important that you check with our agency to see what your eligibility is in terms of your income, because you may be paying way too much of your income towards rent. And so that's how we really look. We look to see exactly, how much you're making to see if you fall into the criteria of eligibility. And I would encourage anyone who is in that situation, even if you are renting now, but you are eligible, to start getting on waiting lists, because the waiting lists really do take a very long time. And the rent is going to continue to go up into a point where then by the time you're forced out, then you're in a dire situation versus, going ahead, putting your name on the list, and your name may come up and you may be able to move into an affordable unit rent that then keeps it at a stable level that you can maintain. But it isn't just for people who are not working. The majority of people who live in our housing who are not seniors are working. They have jobs, but it's just not enough to keep pace. So that's where I would encourage you to take a look at that. Then this other question you had was about how did SHRA continue to keep the R in their name in terms of redevelopment. Basically, we had to start looking for other funding sources. And really, we looked to the federal government. So we were very successful in starting to pull down Choice Neighborhoods Initiative, a $30 million grant from them. We also got a Promise Zone designation that then gave us preference for federal grants, and that designation, totaling all of the grants, has been over $60 million. So we've been using those as resources to really continue to do revitalization in communities.
Okay, and let me just follow up on that, Lachelle. So housing choice vouchers, or even Section 8 vouchers, is that something your organization administers?
Yes, we administer the Housing Choice Voucher Program, and so there is one large list that opens. It opened, back in the end of January. It was open for 2 weeks, and over 43,000 people applied in 2 weeks. So that really speaks to the demand. However, what I encourage you to do is to go and take a look at our website, because in addition to that, we also sometimes have very specific project-based vouchers that are attached to a development, and their waiting list may be open. So that's why you got to check that website, get your name on those particular lists versus waiting for, this one big list that only opens every couple of years, because those are very, very nice developments as well.
Okay, and then also I just want to mention too, if you're considering buying, they have ways to help you subsidize your acquisition. Down payment assistance programs. There used to be a program called the Begin program. I'm not sure if it's still in existence, but you could get, I think, up to almost $40,000 for your down payment. Also, there is a program that's existing now called the MCC program that will work through a mortgage lender that will help you effectively reduce the amount of your monthly payment. Or it gives you a bigger tax credit or deduction. So maybe I'll let the professionals speak to that. Either Monty, maybe you can, or Lachelle can talk about the MCC, and then Monty, you can talk about how it works, and also Veronica can layer in.
Right. The MCC program is another program that we administer that really helps you qualify for a home. But in addition to that, we do also list on our website those affordable homes that were a part of our inventory that we then have gone in and totally fixed up and revamped from top to bottom. So by the time we're done, that home is really essentially almost new because we gut everything and start all over. And then we only will sell it to a low-income buyer. So many people who have taken advantage of that are people who've been priced out by investors. They keep putting in offers and can't get them. But they've come through what we call our Welcome Home program and been eligible to get those programs when working with a very good person who does mortgage counseling and a good realtor, and that's a good segue over to.
Thank you. And yes, in those Welcome Home properties,
are one of the ones in most of the areas offers the down payment assistance of around $40,000, and it makes the payments much more affordable. And also Alan mentioned the mortgage credit certificate, the MCC, and the reason why that's able to help you with your payment is because it's an actual tax credit that you get on your taxes, assuming you have some taxes. If you have taxes that you would be required to pay, you get the tax credit of the amount of interest that you pay on your mortgage, up to 20%. It makes a huge difference on your payment because you can get that money each month on your paycheck. And it's a way to do that. You would talk to a lender or someone can help you how to work through that process. But I tell you that the Welcome Home property is a great system. I've recently helped a couple of families in there who were able to buy a home and pay less than they were paying in rent. It's amazing.
So I just want to make the point that oftentimes we talk about the best first-time homebuyer program being an affordable rent. So if I want to go in and make a down payment and take advantage of this assistance, I need to have been putting some money away, generally speaking. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the number of renters in Sacramento who are paying more than they can afford right now. So Sacramento, about half of Sacramento is renting rather than owning right now. That's been a catastrophic rise. We've lost a lot of the home ownership rates we used to have, especially among households of color in Sacramento. And of those half Sacramentans that are renting, half of that are folks overpaying for rent. They're paying more than they can afford right now. So that dream of home ownership is going further and further away from them. That's why the Sacramento Housing Alliance is part of a coalition that's working to pass rent stabilization in the city of Sacramento, so that folks like the letter we heard from this morning aren't seeing those rent increases 10, 20, 50% while their paychecks aren't increasing, and also put some eviction protections in place so that it's less likely they'll be evicted from their home with no cause and disrupt their lives, and leaving them in a better place to find a new place to rent if they are displaced, or to prepare to buy a home and keep their credit in order.
Okay, great. And there's one other thing that you guys will start hearing more about, because it's going to be a huge, I think, wave of investment coming into undervalued communities. And in District 2, and in fact throughout Sacramento, we have a number of places that are still considered to be undervalued. You know, Del Paso Heights, Strawberry Manors, Meadowview, parts of Meadowview, parts of Valley High are still considered to be somewhat undervalued. Along Del Paso Boulevard, still considered to be undervalued. So the governor has just signed a new authorization for a program called Opportunity Zones. And a large part of District 2 is in a opportunity zone. I'm not certain the impact it's going to have on housing, but in terms of investors, this is a tremendous tool, and I can see them starting to focus a lot of dollars at communities like this. And the way it's supposed to work is that if you invest new dollars in a community that's an opportunity zone, and you leave your money there for 10 years, then you pay absolutely no taxes. So on any of your gain, any of your capital gain, you pay no taxes. Now, I'm uncertain if it's monthly rental income, if you will pay any taxes on that, because the program, as I understand it, there's still some of the fine details. I don't know if Roger, maybe being a state man, might have some insight on it, but Lachelle says she has some information on it. But it's a tremendous tool, and I think what we're going to start seeing is that these communities like Del Paso Boulevard, in and around it, you're going to start seeing more and larger dollars coming in to invest, people that can park their money, and I think it's going to really drive values in our community. So we should be mindful of that. We should be mindful of that as we're thinking about, you know, how we want our community to grow and develop. Michelle?
Yes, Opportunity Zones is really one of those new initiatives that was signed by the Trump administration that allows...
Who did that?
I know. You see, I had to stumble a little bit there when I said it, but it was. But really, it started prior to this administration. There were cities who really were pushing for this as a part of the Promise Zone initiative that Sacramento was awarded. So we are currently have been designated as an opportunity zone. This is a large area, Del Paso is, and we are now awaiting the federal regulations to see exactly what the criteria is. So it's going to start to spell out how the program's going to work. And we're looking for those draft guidelines so that we can make comments on them and obviously make comments in a way that is advantageous for increasing economic development into our communities. So that we hope will be out this summer. And then from there, maybe by the fall, things will start to get finalized and start moving.
All right, very good. Let me just make sure there are people waiting though for questions. So I want to try to get everybody if we can. Mr. Matrango, this gentleman is a Grant High alumni as well. This is Rudy.
I want to tell you that you mentioned about Del Paso Heights. Del Paso Heights was built just strictly for temporary housing for McClellan Field employees back in 41. End. Now, my question is now, back in the mid-50s, there was a situation that came up that they were going to do what they call sweat equity. And several contractors were going to hire individuals who were going to buy houses, and the individuals who were going to buy them were going to come in and do the work and help them build their own home. I didn't know what happened to it. This was supposed to be somewhere along Rio Linda Boulevard, from near Round Arcade. So maybe somebody can come up.
Okay. That's an excellent question. Rudy was talking about a program that's still in existence, Rudy, and Habitat for Humanity runs that program. In fact, Rob Kurth was the director, who was a former city councilman. I'm not certain if he's still the director. I don't think he is. But that program is still in existence, and they have sweat equity. So that might be another opportunity for people who can't buy a home traditionally, can contact Habitat for Humanity and figure out where they're doing these sweat equity houses and then get into that program. We've done a number of them in District 2, and I've done the ribbon cutting ceremonies for it. Thank you, Rudy. Thank you very much, sir. Okay.
I'm not sure if anybody can answer this question, but I had one of my buyers come back to me about the CCNRs. How come it's so hard to change the CCNRs?
So, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Alita.
Alita Turner is a realtor. She's done a lot of good work. In fact, has done some work for us. She asked a question about CCNRs, and CCNRs are administered by the state of California, and a developer has to put them in place prior to selling to the home buyers. And then each person that buys has to sign that they agree to the CCNRs. So, and those are the original buyers. My understanding, and we don't have any lawyers on the panel, and so I don't want to put it to them, but my understanding is that a majority of the homeowners can change them if they agree. So you would have to go around, you have to be a politician like Roger. You know, you have to go around. No, I don't know what it says, but I'm just saying in general, if they want to do it, they got to go and talk to their neighbors and say they want to make a change, and then they have to take that to the state and do it that way, to the Department of Real Estate. Well, no, I don't. Well, each CCNR is different, though. There's not a universal CCNR. So, and we've... Yeah, those were some of the old deed restrictions. And what Alita is saying is that in some of the old deed restrictions, it said that you couldn't rent or sell to anybody who was not a Caucasian. You know, some of them are, but we're fastly going through that, okay?
And then I have another question. I'm about to put 5 Del Paso Heights homes on the market. So, Mr. Maxwell, do you have any buyers for me? That's to help with the, because I hated, I had to give an eviction notice today. In fact, across the street on Grand, and I didn't really like to do that. And I would ask her, could she buy or anything like that? But do you, for the people that are where the rents are rising and everything, do you have like people lined up and everything?
All right, so Anita says she has. All right, so anybody looking for a house, you guys see Anita. Look, there's people back there. Let me go to the next question.
Hi, I'm Lynette Davies. I have been a business owner here in Del Paso Heights for the last 13 years, and one of the things I was really concerned about is rent stabilization. Having worked in this area, and I know from the neighborhood association meetings that I've attended that we've taken a look at the amount of homeowners, occupied homeowners, compared to the rental. And the rental here is incredibly high. And when we have this, without having any type of rent stabilization, people here are just getting ran out of homes that they've literally lived in for 10, 15 years. And yet other communities have had to face these same types of things in the Bay Area. And are we looking at any type of protections for people that have lived here in the Del Paso Heights area for 10 years and can no longer stay in their homes without having some type of help, not just help for a monthly income or help buying a home, but help on keeping the inequity of their income to the rental market that's happening?
And that question that Lynette just asked is happening more and more and more, and it's a problem. And there's discussions right now, I know, within the city. We're trying to figure out how to do it. But let me just suggest that I believe the number one way to have stabilization is we have to build many, many more housing units. We have to increase supply, because in the supply and demand economy, if the supply is tight and you get high demand, it pushes prices up. And we have one of the most attractive places to live. People are coming to Sacramento. So it's not just us and our kids and all of that. People are moving here from all over the state of California and from other states. And so we have to do a better job at increasing the inventory of housing and housing options. One way that the city has talked about, and the mayor in particular, is trying to develop a bunch of tiny homes as well. And tiny homes, I believe, is going to play a very vital role in helping to add inventory to our market. So, but that's a tough question. I don't think these guys, okay.
Hi, thanks everyone for coming tonight. I really appreciate the conversation about housing and affordable housing, particularly in our neighborhood. One of my questions is, we've got a lot of renter landlords who are great actors and have, because of their desire to keep families in place, have kept rents low because it's just who they are. But we also have landlords that are bad actors and who have kept the rents low because they are not providing quality housing. And so I'm interested in hearing more about the rental housing inspection program, how that operates, how it can be proactively initiated in our community, and then also how we can implement protections for residents who have been living in substandard housing as those repairs and quality improvements are made, so that they're not forced out and we see double-digit percentage rent increases for folks and having them displaced.
Well, I'm not sure that I can really entertain the second question in terms of how we can protect them. I can tell you that there's a section in our ordinance that precludes retaliation for somebody making a complaint about the rental unit. The good news is that we do have a proactive program, and so if we had word that there were substandard conditions in any property, we can just do a blanket kind of, hey, we're just checking this out to make sure everything's okay, and go in and conduct an inspection. We can conduct an exterior inspection as well, and a lot of times that's what triggers us to go inside. Some of these units, and we've done a lot with our Justice for Neighbors program as well for the real bad slum landlords that have just totally turned properties around. But some of these units have what we call a self-certification stat. And what that is basically is at some time in the past, our building inspection unit went out and they basically blessed the property as being up to standard. The problem is those properties change hands, and over years they become dilapidated and lack of maintenance and suffer from lack of maintenance. So where we have word that there are substandard conditions, all you got to do is make the complaint to our office. It's better if one of the tenants do it, but certainly if you suspect through word of mouth that there are substandard conditions, that's when we go out, and if it's bad enough, we get the city attorney involved and Justice for Neighbors, and we can even go as far as receivership and taking the property, rehabbing the property, and then turning the property back over to renters.
Thank you, Carl. And also, let me just say that our office, we had gotten several calls from people who were being evicted because they had called to complain about substandard living conditions. And I actually talked to the owners, and after talking to the owner, they actually changed their mind about evicting the tenant, and they fixed the repairs. So we've had that happen on at least 3 occasions that I'm aware of. But that is a problem. So anybody who's getting retaliated against or they feel like it because they've reported substandard conditions should contact Carl's office, but also let our council office know as well.
Hi there, thanks all for being here. My name is Alicia Sebastian. I'm a homeowner here in Old North Sacramento. I think that we've talked about a lot of different housing issues. I think we've talked a little bit and touched about inequity, where my neighborhood here in Old North Sacramento looks different than Woodlake, looks different than Noralto. We've talked a lot about investments coming in and that we're seeing home prices rise. My question is, with all of these different things happening, what are things that we as community members can and should be doing to make sure that folks stay in their homes, that the quality of life improves for all of our neighbors? And what are some things we might be asking our elected officials or the role of the city or the county in doing that?
Great question, you guys. I would take a stab at it. You know, when I grew up here in this community, I knew everybody on my block, everybody around the corner and all of that. And I think one thing we can do is get out and get to know the people that we live with in our communities. I think is very important. But one of the other things I've thought about, and it probably would be something that might be administered through Lachelle's organization, is to try to create a city fund that can help in emergencies where people fall behind in their rent or they fall behind in their mortgage payment. And I'm not certain how that would work, but it's something that we're getting enough concerned people calling us about trying to keep pace, you know, that I think is something that we may need to consider an emergency fund to help people do some type of rent stabilization or mortgage assistance or something like that. I'm not certain if does anybody have any other comments as it relates to that? Veronica?
So my whole job is letting folks know how they can get involved in solving the housing crisis together. So I'm going to try to keep this list short. All right. I'm going to give you 2 things you can do tonight. First of all, Lachelle, I should have taken your cue earlier. Go to our website, sachousingalliance.org. Our newsletter is a wealth of resources about how you can get involved in solving our housing crisis. We can also ask our elected officials to rededicate some of the redevelopment money or former redevelopment money that we call boomerang funds back to affordable housing. So that's a little bit technical, but we're talking about that dissolution of redevelopment agencies. We lost a lot of the funding we had dedicated to affordable housing, but we can get it back, at least some of it. So those are 2 things you can do tonight. This summer, there's going to be a community engagement process kicking off that Lachelle could talk more about, looking at an analysis of fair housing in the region. So when we're talking about where we're investing, what we're building where, how we can recover from the shameful legacy that those racial covenants represent and all the redlining and disinvestment that created the communities we see today, we're having a public conversation as a region about how to change that as we move forward. And then finally, in November, when you get your ballots, you'll be asked to vote on an affordable housing bond, $4 billion that will go towards home ownership for veterans and creation of new affordable multifamily housing. So that's another piece of how we get the financing for the housing we need in Sacramento.
Thank you, Veronica. That's great information.
So one thing that I keep hearing tonight is we need to build more housing, we need more supply for the demand, yada, yada, yada. I know that there are groups that are working on repealing Costa-Hawkins, which is one of the problems that makes this call for new housing incredibly disingenuous. Because Costa-Hawkins is a law that says any building built after 79 or 80 something, there cannot be any rent control. So building any new affordable housing is absolutely pointless because this law currently exists. Yes, please. Please correct or add or.
Let me help you out, and then gentle correction, and then affirmation, okay?
Okay.
So Costa-Hawkins does three things. It's a statewide bill that limits rent control on, like you say, construction after 1995, limits rent control on single-family homes as opposed to multifamily homes, and then implements something called vacancy decontrol, which means even under rent control, rents go back to market rate at the end of a tenancy. So if I'm in an apartment, my rent has been kept stabilized while I'm there. It goes back to market when I move out for the new tenant. So the repeal of Costa-Hawkins means nothing in Sacramento right now because we don't have rent stabilization. When we talk about affordable housing, we talk about the subsidized housing that we're up here trying to produce more of. That's a different situation. Costa-Hawkins doesn't affect it. No worries on that front. We can still produce affordable housing. But you're right, Costa-Hawkins repeal changes the game for rent stabilization in Sacramento. Because to the earlier point about how many folks have been pushed out of their homes and are renting now in single-family homes, about half of Sacramento's rental stock is single-family homes. So Costa-Hawkins limits our ability as Sacramentans to implement rent stabilization on about half of our rentals. Fair?
Cool. Yeah, good information. Thank you. I don't know a lot about it. I just know it's a horrible law. So I don't know. I think that Veronica, right? I think that she actually answered a lot of my questions. But my question that remains is, how do we get this development money? Because I know we're not going to stop development. I know we're not going to stop gentrification. But how do we take some of that money and reinvest it back into our communities? I know one of the suggestions that Veronica just had was to invest that in housing subsidies, but what are some other things that we can do to keep people here? Because without residents, there's no city.
Well, I agree that going to Sacramento Housing Alliance's website and also getting on their email is perfect. I mean, they just really get that information out. So sign up for all of their alerts and you'll start getting information that really does make you very informed and get you out to support a lot of the housing initiatives that are going on. But also in addition to that, how do we kind of get back to where we were? Just to give you an idea of magnitude, we used to receive under redevelopment about $16 million a year for affordable housing. And then that just went away. So we went from 16 to 0. All we have now is about 4 million or so that we get from all those other federal sources I was telling you about. However, there is a bill that is currently out there to bring redevelopment for the affordable housing component back. So I'm not sure if that is actually going to make it through and get signed, but it lays the foundation for next year when maybe there's a turnover. Well, there will be a turnover in our governorship. That is something you really, really do need to track, be involved in, and really come out and speak to the need for having those resources come back to our local communities.
Hi, my name is Marianne Roberts, and I live in Del Paso Heights. And Alan Warren, this is one of the first meetings I've been to that you've given, town hall meetings. I want to first ask all the people, how many of you live in District 2? Oh, okay. I've been living in Del Paso Heights for over 40 years, and I've seen things not happen. And I've seen promises come and not, they say they're going to do things and they don't. I've heard tonight about all the housing development and what you want to do. Del Paso Heights is a very old community. You come in, you say you want to put new housing in there. That's great. I live in Del Paso Heights, and I've got family all over the Bay Area, and they all know Del Paso Heights is not a great area. It has a stigma to it. So whether you bring in new stuff, it's not going to change that until we start changing the community as a whole. Bring better businesses in there for the community. Improve our education where people will want to come over here and live with their kids. Del Paso Heights is, I believe, from my own experience, is made up of a lot of rentals. Not very many owners of property live there. They've gone elsewhere. And right now I feel like Del Paso Heights has turned into a community for investors to come in, put money in, and just leave. They don't care about the community. Oh, here is a quick way to make money, you know? But I don't have to keep up the property. This, what is it, opportunity zone? 10 years? I don't like that. Because all that does is bring more investors in, and they're not going to care about our community. It's a way to make money because the property is so low. My property values have not gone up. I've sat here for 40 years waiting for things to happen. They haven't. About the only thing I see happen in Del Paso Heights, I live over there by Hagenwood. I have one of the large lots. I see concerts come to the park. But I don't see very many other things. I don't want to sell my home. I don't want to go elsewhere. I want to make Del Paso Heights a better community, and I'm willing to work and do whatever I have to make that happen. And for renters, I feel like it's, one, you got to help us with these folks that are coming in, buying up properties, and even putting new properties in, and a lot of these first-time home owners do not know how to take care of property. Give them some lessons or something. Help them, give them some, our community could be great, okay? It was once upon a time, and I'd like to see it come back, you know? And I want you to hold these investors or these redevelopers coming in that want to put new property in, hold them responsible for the upkeep of the manor. And if they don't do that, then hold them accountable. And these investors, these homeowners that live in Del Paso Heights that's not doing anything, code enforcement wouldn't be necessary if we had responsible homeowners or owners that rent their property out. They don't take care of their property. I pay taxes just like Elk Grove and all the other communities. I want what's needed for our community to make it better than it is.
Okay. Well, as you guys heard, we got a lot of work to do. So we still got a lot of work. But let me just say, too, that, and I've seen the community, my family's been in the community for 50-plus years. And my parents bought their house for $20,000. And today it's worth about $370,000. And in the last 5 years, it has gone up $150,000. So whether we want to acknowledge it or not, people see our community as an opportunity, just like we should. It is a community that has its challenges, and there's no question about that. But there's still a lot of work to do, and so I take your comments the way you intended them, and I think if I can be of some direct assistance, please let me know. And I know you said you're ready to roll up your sleeves and go to work too, so let's do it. I'm ready to do it. All right.
My name is Toby Tennessee, and I'm a dreamer. I've been in Sacramento since I was 6. I grew up in Northgate, and I used to walk that bridge, that little bitty bridge down Silver Eagle before they built the big bridge. I walked the bridge so much to where that when I came to the Heights, I never went nowhere else. And all my life they told me that I couldn't own a house, I couldn't do nothing. But now should I own 4 houses? I got a 6-bedroom where I rent rooms on Haywood. I'm at the point to where is that I'm ready to sell and move because all of the roadblocks were for me. I bought a house on High Street, and the previous owners did an addition in the back. And when I bought it, it was a 3-bedroom, and everybody on the block got their garage converted. So I converted my garage, and then they called on me. All right, so the people came out, and then they told me to tear it down. But then when they went to the back, they wanted me to tear the back down too. So I tear the back down just to be in compliance with them, and then I get the architect to draw me up something bigger than the house that's in the front. So then when the people come, and then they look at me like I don't know if I'm black or what's the problem, but I comply with everything that they said to do, and the inspector Elijah Palakalis, whatever his name is, who he never came out to inspect. Make sure I didn't call him. Make sure I went on vacation. I called him before I went on vacation. When I come back on vacation, I called him, and then they said that they was gonna come out on Monday or Tuesday. Monday and Tuesday gone. So it's like, now it's like, man, so I'm still on hold, and I don't know what to do.
All right, so Toby's issue, I think Carl, you and Toby could have a conversation. Maybe you can give him the number to your department. It sounds like he's having issues with the inspectors coming out, and then maybe getting confusing information as it relates to what was done to the house previously, and then what he'd like to do. And some of the neighbors, I guess what Toby's saying is they're not having the same issue, even though they've done some of the same things. So I think you feel like you've been picked on, maybe? Okay.
And the room that they had me tear down, I had 2 people staying in that room. So it's like, they homeless now. So it's like...
Okay, I can get with you later on, but I'd like to use in an odd way validation from you that we are doing code enforcement. We do a lot of code enforcement in this area. Unfortunately, some folks do get caught up because they feel they're trying to do the right thing, or they buy something like a used car and they find out they got to replace the transmission or whatever. But I can get with you afterwards, and Mr. Proc works for me. And so we'll get your inspections, and we'll try to give you as much time to do what you need to do to get it right.
That's the head man.
All right. The other thing is, so I'm sitting in the back, and I'm hearing you guys talking about a lot of money and stuff, right? So when I walked in the building, I was ready to sell my houses. Now, 3 of my properties, I could build some houses in my backyard like my neighbors got. And how do I get some of that millions and millions of dollars that y'all talking about over there, instead of going to this hard money people and they killing my pocket?
That's a whole different discussion. So I tell you, so Toby, talk to Monty after we get done. Yeah, okay. Monty might be able to work with you, okay? All right.
One of the things that hasn't been brought up about this increases in rent is the extreme cost that has gone up to keep these houses up in the last 10 years. And I know that for a fact. I've got 4 rental units over here, and I am spending money out of my own pocket every month from my retirement to keep up my properties because I want to keep them up. And the people who aren't keeping them up and just pocketing money, that's a different story. But for people who do have rentals and are spending their money to keep them up, People need to know that too. I spend a lot of money keeping my properties up. So that's an issue too. The increase has gotten huge. To pay somebody, I mean, I can't believe little tiny parts now, $3 to $5, you know, and you might need many of them. You might need something that's $100. It's unbelievable the cost, the increase. You go to Home Depot, and every time I go in there, there's an increase in something. So that's a problem.
It's a legitimate issue. Yeah, costs are going up, and property taxes are going up, so there are some costs that impact rental prices. Miss Mina.
Hi. So 2 things, just to the last 2 questions. I was getting some whispers from the audience about how we should have talked a little bit more about accessory dwelling units. So, Toby, when you're talking about putting a new unit in your backyard, from the city's point of view, those are called accessory dwelling units. It's one great way to increase supply, as we've been talking about doing tonight, kind of getting at that tiny home, but from an individual point of view, right? So if you want to create something you can rent in your backyard, but as you say, it's becoming more and more expensive to be a landlord, so let's go to that. As we talk about rent stabilization, it's important to keep in mind that under California law, landlords are always entitled to a fair right of return, right? So the ordinance has, the ballot initiative that's going around now that would implement rent stabilization if we get enough signatures to get it on the ballot, absolutely has the provision for that fair rate of return, as it legally must, as well as additional increases that you can access as a landlord for improvements, necessary improvements you have to make, right? So if you hear from Carl that you need to put a new roof on your building and you're amortizing those costs, there's an additional increase above kind of the one we're generally talking about when we're talking about that ballot initiative to make sure you're getting that fair rate of return.
Good evening. My name is Mina Perez, and I too lived in Del Paso Heights since 1964. I got involved with my community. I was one of the originals that pushed to get the library, the Del Paso library that is there, that exists. I was young, I was in high school, but I was part of that staff, and it's there today because we needed a library to help our kids, our community. But from that, I also learned that we have to continue growing and adding to it. Now, your staff, I mean, you're here, and we appreciate your knowledge, your skill, your level, but your staff, each one of your staff needs to be educated to when one of us calls and has a concern, it shouldn't have to come to your level. They better take care of it from right there. Because that's one of the things that we're having problems with. We're not getting past the first step, the counter. We're not. And so we have these headaches and then problems are occurring. So, your staff needs to understand, take care of it, educate, give the information, provide it at the high schools, at the library, utilize opportunities of events. For example, I too created an event to continue economic development. I do the Sacramento Taco Festival, and we give opportunities to be sponsorships, to advertise whatever your organization does, and we are a nonprofit. So we also teach individuals, look around. People are creating their own economic way, whether they're making tacos or selling a drink or water or even cleaning up. I have homeless individuals that live out here that I have actually hired to come and assist me at the festival to pick up, to clean up. And I've had a couple asking me, hey, I know how to cook. I used to work. Can I do this? And then I go, yes, but you have to go through the training, and we'll educate you, we'll give you information, and you can begin next year. Last year I had 4 people that started. They had never done it before. Today, 2 of them have a truck, 1 of them has a restaurant, and the other one is still doing her tent. So what I'm saying is that we have to help our own community about what we already know and what we have. So also, when events occur, whether it's musical, art, support us. Just say, are you a nonprofit? If not, let us help you. Let us give you that information. So again, each one of us can help our community by contributing what we've already learned and what we can do. So that's what I continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anissa James. I'm a resident of the area. I actually live literally behind Sammy's. And I know several people. Anyway. So I actually have a few issues that have been talked about here. So I'm currently a renter, but I don't want to be a renter. I would love to be a homeowner. And I started going through the process and started looking at homes. As a matter of fact, a home that was abandoned and it was bank owned for a long time. They finally, an investor came in, purchased it, and I happened to inquire. I saw what the house looked like prior to. I actually watched them do the work. The house is literally across the street from my house, right? They put in beams, beautiful, okay? You go inside, doesn't even look like it belongs in the area. $330,000, Redwood Avenue. 2 bedrooms. The master bedroom, the closet is so small, I could probably put 3 of my outfits in there. You laugh, but I'm dead serious. The room that would be my daughter's room is so tiny, her furniture that I currently have for her wouldn't fit in there. And I didn't want to laugh. I mean, I've seen some small properties. I'm born and raised in New York, but I also came from a middle to upper, family, and I grew up in a single family home. It was 5 bedrooms and blah, 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 blah. So I'm used to space. And I'm like, what is this? And really, $330,000? And I asked him, I said, do you really think that you're going to get that in this area? Oh, absolutely. Because his intent is obviously to flip it. That's not what he purchased it for. He purchased it for like 200 and something, but he wants an instant profit of over $100,000. It's things like this that have also driven my rent up. I went from paying 11, which I kind of balked at. Why? Because the size of the unit, right? It's okay, but also the area, right? I was like, okay, I'm starting to see the changes. I see a little bit of gentrification. They got the microbrewery over here. They got the yummy grilled cheese place. They got all this cool stuff kind of. Okay, fine. I get a notice in the mail saying 30-day rent increase of $100+. And I'm like, that's interesting because I got a raise of 1.5%. Now, am I living federal poverty limit? No, I'm not. Thank God. But I'm a single parent of a toddler who pays daycare. My daycare is some of the rents that people pay. That's just my daycare alone. That's not my car note. That's not my insurance. That's not having to be forced to pay for health care that I don't really need or use for me and my kid, which has super high, ridiculously deductibles. That's a whole nother totally different topic. I am trying to figure out how I can provide what I had for my daughter. And living here in Sacramento, at one point in time, I've been here for about 5 years now. At one point in time, I was like, home ownership is actually going to be possible. And in the last year, I feel like somebody has literally taken a whiz on my dreams. And that hurts my heart. I'm a full-time student. I'm a full-time honors student at that. I'm a full-time single mom, and I bust my blankety blank working as a revenue cycle advisor, right, in the healthcare field. And to come home and deal with a landlord who, as far as I'm concerned, she's a slumlord, okay, doesn't want to fix anything. Mind you, I'm an excellent tenant. I put money into her place. I put in a garage door opener with the Bluetooth attachment, so I can open up my garage door from my phone if I wanted to, right? I asked her, hey, Jennifer, how about you go half? That's fair, right? You want to know what I was told? No. So to you, as much as I feel for you, right, because you are a landlord and you're the one that's upkeeping it, what about tenants like myself who are excellent tenants, never paid my rent late? Not one time. I've been there over a year, about a year and a half. Put money. I've done landscaping, marble chips, all kinds of stuff. You can see the umbrellas from my back patio from Sammy's parking lot. All kinds of stuff that I've done. Do I get any credit for that? Do I get any assistance? And I get forced additional rent, but yet she doesn't want to fix anything. And yet I'm stuck because if I move to somewhere else to another rental property, I'm looking at, for a 2-bedroom, 1 bathroom, equivalent in size, I'm looking at about $1,300 or $1,400. How can I afford that? Seriously. So whoever on this panel, I'm asking, that's why I was like, me, homeowner, yes please. If you have any access to any programs that I'm not aware of, I need to talk to whoever. I don't know who on this panel I need to talk to, but yeah. Monty? You?
Yeah, there he is. Yeah, and the realtor can help you. Alita, but Monty can help you get qualified. You know, everybody who's rented, in fact, one of the wonderful things about Monty thinks everybody qualifies for a loan. Everybody. He will tell them, you qualify not today, but in 3 months if you do A, B, C, and D. And he will walk you down the line to get you qualified so you can then go find something. And it may not be your dream house, but you got to start somewhere. Okay, so talk to Monty or somebody like Monty, get pre-qualified if you're a renter, and then you got to work. You got to get out and find a place. It may be, it's going to be a fixer-upper, or it's going to be a tiny home, or it's going to be, you know, it's going to be something that's going to need some tender loving care. But it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to build equity. It's an opportunity to have your own property. And it's an opportunity, I think, for stabilization if you own your own as opposed to renting from somebody else. So, but these people up here can help you. Uh-oh, here he come. Here he come.
About these houses that was boarded up when I was a kid and they still boarded up, how do I get in here? How we gonna clean up our neighborhood on that?
So I know Carl does the boarding up and the code stuff. Lachelle actually has an inventory, or she used to, of homes that are redevelopment agency owned, and they had a program where they were offering them for sale, not for investors though, I don't believe, or maybe they were, but they were for people who have certain incomes. But Lachelle has some homes, and Carl, you might want to speak to the boarded up and vacant stuff.
Well, just real quick, what I would recommend is that you do a public records request on the property, and if you see a house that's boarded up, and then you can also do what we call a demand request, because I'll be honest, what's happening is a lot of houses were boarded up and we levied a lot of penalties and fees during the housing crisis. And so some of these houses that you see out there now are residual of that inventory. And what I've been doing for the last 3 years, believe it or not, and this is a testament, I think, to the development that's going on in Sacramento, which we already validated, is that I can do what we call a penalty waiver agreement for a third party. So where there's a house that's been boarded up and it's accrued code enforcement penalties, I can waive up to 90% of the penalties for a third party who wants to buy that house and then agree to correct all the code violations within a certain period of time. So my suggestion to you would be, look at the house. If you see it's been boarded up, sometimes we got folks that pass, mom and dad pass, the kids don't want anything to do with the house. I end up calling probate to try to get the probate going so that we can get the house on the courthouse steps and get it sold, because my goal is to get all these houses occupied, because that's when a lot of my problems go away. So do the public records request, do a demand for our office, do a public records request to see whether or not there's been any code violations on the property, then do a demand for my office to find out if they owe the city money, how much money they owe, and then come in and offer to do a penalty waiver agreement with the owner, and you might be surprised.
That's excellent information, you guys. Excellent. So.
Hi, I just have one other question. I have a question about the utility companies that come out on our streets and perform like different tasks. They're putting new pipes in and so forth. I've on several occasions asked them when they get finished with doing the tearing up of the street and everything, are they going to re-asphalt it or tar it and everything? And they've always promised that they would. but in all the times that they've ever did any kind of work on the street, that has never happened. Who is responsible for that? I mean, just like in the other neighborhoods, their streets are nice and smooth and black, but they come out and they tear up our streets all the time. And they never get re-asphalted or tar. I don't know the exact term, but I'm sure all of you can relate to that because they've been out in my neighborhood several times. And they all say, oh yeah, we're gonna retar it or whatever, but that never happens. So I just wanna know who is responsible for that, and the money that's used for utilities, cutting trees back from the lights and so forth, whose responsibility is that? And why don't they do a better job at using our money that we're paying taxes for to, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, so you know, what I would say is that everybody, when you see work like that being done in the streets, I would take the name of the company and just have the name and the license plate number, because a lot of times, or you can take a snapshot with your phone, because we've had a number of incidences where, for instance, on vacant property, people will go and dump stuff. Some of these utility companies, they're digging up streets and they're doing stuff, and they got to take those, what they call spoils, somewhere. They're supposed to take them to a designated place and dispose of it, but a lot of times these are either the contractor or the subcontractor, and if you're not watching, they might go around the corner and find a place where they can dump it and not have to pay dump fees, and they get to keep, you know, their contracted amount of money for doing the work without actually doing what they were supposed to do. So we have actually seen instances and had pictures of companies that had done that, and luckily we had, somebody had a phone that had a camera, and they took pictures, and then we were able to go back to those companies and ask them to either pay for the cleanup or come out and clean it up themselves. And so if companies are going into the streets, and these streets are called public right-of-ways most of the time, and they're owned by the city, but then they have easements in them that allow certain utility companies to come into them. So if we know who's doing the work, if mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would do that. You can always call my office, and we can try to track down the appropriate entity to talk to. My council office phone number is 808-7002. 808-7002. And in fact, every council office, we have 8 different council districts. It's 808-7001 is Natomas, 7002 is us, 7003 is Jeff Harris in East Sacramento, and it goes all the way 7001 through 8. We're District 2, okay? You can also look us up very easily to just say City of Sacramento, and then all the stuff will pop up, and names and phone numbers will pop up as well. But always, if you have questions, do not hesitate to call your elected officials. You can call my office. You can also call the office of the professionals that are here on the stage. And it is our job to try to help you. 2 of my staff people were here. I think they're probably in the lobby or they just left. Daniel Savala and Elisa Johnson were here. And most of the time, if you call my office, you're going to get actually 3 of my staff people. Sean Tao was here earlier checking people in when you came in. One of the 3 of them are going to answer. And I've been told, and I take pride in this, is that our office is a very professional office. Alicia, I get a lot of compliments from people calling our office for Alicia. So, but call our office if you have questions. You can always call the utility companies that you see doing work in the streets and all that as well. And so you guys, we were scheduled to go until 8 o'clock. It's after 8, but Mr. Matrenga is going to, you guys would not believe how old this gentleman is, you guys. You should really just give him a round of applause.
Class of 49, right? Well, so my question to you is,
I lived in Dos Rios when I first got out of high school. It was pretty good rent and all. And I understand they're going to tear it down. What's going to happen to all those people that are on, I guess, a subsidized rent and all? That worked out so well for first timers. We lived there for a couple of years so we could buy a house. You mentioned your father and mother bought that house for, well, we bought our first house in Strawberry Manor. Well, wait, it was called Will Acres. This side, $100 down. The total price was $8,900. Anyway, with a garage. But anyway, could you answer that question, because it worked out good. Where are those people going to go?
In fact, that's a very good question. Those individuals, there's 218 units there, and we have been going through the process of relocating them in preparation for demolishing that site and rebuilding, and then they will have the right to return back to the site. So they all received either a voucher or they could elect to go to another public housing unit until the units are rebuilt, which will take probably another about 3 years or so on our current time schedule. But yes.
Market value, or can
They actually come back to the exact public housing unit.
Oh, perfect.
Yes.
That's the location is fantastic.
Yeah.
And it worked out great for a lot of us guys graduated from Grattan at 50. We all live there.
Right, and it will be a brand new unit in a brand new community that will have a lot of the amenities that are not there. There'll be a park, a pool, a community room, exercise room, all of those types of things when they return.
Great.
And also, let me just, how many units, Michelle? There's 200 and some that are going to be torn down. How many are going to be rebuilt? So close to 500 units will be built on a site that currently has like 200 and some. You guys, so I'm not going to take any more questions. These good people have taken time out of their lives to come and answer the questions for us. And so I
just
know
wanted
Carl
to
has
close
a
with a
comment.
song. Is that okay? I'm just joking. What I did want to say for our landlords and some of the folks, the homeowners who were saying, you know, it's so expensive, you know, to go to Home Depot and get what you need to get. How many folks here are familiar with Habitat for Humanity store?
Ooh, store.
Okay. Are you familiar with that? Okay. So it's on 10th Street, and my speculation is that they received donated appliances, windows, doors, and so forth. And I would recommend that if you're looking for something, again, you might get lucky at a really good price by going in there and you're doing a double deed because you're helping yourself and also you're. I'm looking online. It looks like the only one in Sacramento is at 10th Street location. It's on 10th Street. Richards.
Yeah, it's right off of Richards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
North 10th. Believe me, it's there because I go there sometimes.
All right, you guys, would you give these professionals a round of applause, please? And please, if you have additional questions, you want their contact information, ask them for it. I'm sure they'd be happy to help you. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.